Welcome to AUSA Now, the United States Army's association to our 66th annual meeting and exposition. I'm Lieutenant General Retired Susan Lawrence, the former CIO G6. Currently, I serve as Managing Director for Armed Forces Sector in Accenture Federal. Our forum titled, Winning the War for Talent, is one of the 8 AUSA's contemporary military forums conducted over the last 3 days. AUSA continues to amplify the United States Army and helps to further the association's mission to be the voice of the Army and support for the soldier. To start off, it is our honor to have General James McConville, Chief of Staff of the Army, here to make opening remarks, and then we will move into the panel and the Q&A session. General McConville.
Well, thank you, Susan. I'm very, very excited to be here. As many of you have noticed that people, it's about people first. People is our #1 priority. So we are in a war for talent. So how we take care of people in the Army, how we manage their talent is extremely important. So this panel you're about to see is really a big deal to me, and that's why I appreciate the opportunity to make opening comments. And the Army's people, it's our greatest strength. It's our most important weapon system. It's why we win in the battle, and everything else will follow if we get the right people in the right job at the right time. And when I talk about people, I'm talking about our soldiers from all 3 components. I'm talking about our civilians, I'm talking about our families, and I'm talking about our soldiers' flight. They all come together to make us the world's greatest Army, and we should never take our people for granted. And we are moving from an industrial age personnel management system where we treat everyone as interchangeable parts to a 21st century talent management system where we manage individuals on their knowledge, their skills, their behavior, and kind of surprise even their preferences. We believe we got the right people in the right job at the right time. Everything else would follow. So I appreciate the opportunity to open this thing up. We've got some great talent management initiatives in the force right now, and they're going to really make a difference. So hope you have a great panel. Thank you. Back to you, Susan.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored to moderate this panel. After serving 40 years in the Army, I know how critical and important it is to take care of our soldiers and civilians who serve and sacrifice for our nation. As you know, there is fierce competition for this talent between the services, federal government, and industry. In short, we are in a war for talent. The Army recognizes this and rapidly is moving to create and transition to the 21st century talent management system. What is so revolutionary to me in this system, for the first time, the team is working to match the needs of the individual to the needs of the Army. This ability to optimize this will increase career satisfaction and ultimately readiness through increased end strength. I am pleased that the architects for this new talent management system are with us today. Sir, I'd like to begin with you, Dr. Ornitsky, who is the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. In this role, he provides human capital leadership and direction on total force management, manpower, and workforce management programs. Sir.
Hey, thank you very much, General Lawrence. We've got a great group gathered here today to talk about the ground we've covered in the last year. At last year's AUSA, it was a big event. We announced that just days before AUSA opened up, the Secretary-in-Chief had signed off on the Army's first ever people strategy. And this strategy is really about putting people first in a very systematic way that focuses on key things we have to accomplish to bring together cohesive teams that are capable of preparing for and winning the nation's wars. A lot's been accomplished in the last year along all of our lines of effort, and those are to acquire people, get the right talent. We're very focused on that as our main effort because we don't do lateral entry in the Army. Our culture is so important to us that we don't bring people in at the top or the middle normally to help guide this organization. We expect that we build that culture from the bottom up. That's important you understand what it is to be a private, to be a lieutenant, an entry-level civilian, so that when you move up the grade, you understand what the organization's about, what we're trying to achieve, and how to build a team that is very cohesive. So acquire, a lot's been done, and we'll talk about that. A great deal's been done with regard to develop, and we spent some time yesterday talking about that with General Funk and the TRADOC team. They took us into depth about the how we're going to develop our folks, a little bit about our culture. The other elements, of course, are employee. General Brito, our great G1 is here. He's going to help us learn about the employee parts as well as retain. Carol Burton does the same thing for us in the civilian space. A lot going on there with regard to employ and develop and retain and acquire. Frankly, a lot of progress has been made there as well. And then the gentleman who can really tie all the key pieces together is the general officer who's been leading our talent management task force, General McGee, who has really led the way with regard to assessment. Assessment's vital because assessment's really at the foundation of talent. In 2006, we really introduced the idea of talent to the Army. At that point, the Army had been very focused on big aggregates, branch, grade, things like that were appropriate in a day before we had the kind of information technology that would allow us to understand our folks at a very granular level. Talent is really about understanding our folks, about knowing what motivates them, what are their great gifts and knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and where do those fit best in the Army, and how do we show them those opportunities in the Army so that they can actually position themselves to take advantage of those opportunities and compete for them. General McGee is a gentleman leading our way in terms of building that understanding in our military officer corps today, but going into the future, NCOs and across the ranks. He's done a great deal of work with regard to coaching based on the knowledge we gained from assessment, and he's going to share a lot of that experience with us today too. So with that opening, I think I'll turn it back to you, General Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. Next, as you said, is Major General J.P. McGee. He currently serves as the Director of the Army Talent Management Task Force, and he is charged with rethinking how the Army acquires, maintains, develops, manages, and employs talent around the force. Sir.
Thank you, ma'am. For my initial comments, I'd just like to hit a couple of high points and talk about some of our initiatives. The Chief has made it perfectly clear that the Army is transforming now to be ready for combat against a peer threat. And central to that is this idea of establishing a 21st century talent management system. And, concurrent with this theme or consistent with this theme is the Army needs to win the war for talent so we can win future wars. It's really as simple as that. Establishing a 21st century talent management system increases our operational readiness and ability to prevail in future combat. A lot of people say, well, you start looking at preferences, this is all about making millennials happy. Well, making millennials happy might be a secondary concern, but what the primary concern is about creating an Army that can win on any battlefield against any adversary in the future. And you do that by making sure that every individual who's in the Army contributes to their maximum capacity by utilizing their talents to contribute to the mission of the United States Army. Okay? We know that predictions about the future, about what combat is going to be and what the environment are going to be wrong. And we know that, but we also know that the right mix of people and talents is going to allow us to overcome those gaps and overcome them more rapidly than our adversaries so we can prevail in a future conflict. By making our people our number one priority, we've embarked across the Army on a campaign of transformation that frankly has been unprecedented, I think, in scale and scope. And I'd like to highlight some of these initiatives and how assessments are playing a role about this. So think about this. Just a year ago, we within the Army had a system that selected officers for battalion command and brigade command, or 05 and 06 other critical billets, based solely on a file review of their officer evaluation reports, where every file was reviewed by about 20 to 25 board members for about 2 minutes, max. To date, we have run the Battalion Commander Assessment Program and the Colonel's Commander Assessment Program, in which over 1,000 candidates have undergone a 5-day assessment program in which candidates for command are considered using assessments that consider multiple different perspectives of the candidates. And assessments are different than evaluations. Assessments provide objective information about an officer, whereas evaluations provide subjective insights. And those subjective insights contained in our evaluations are always going to be the cornerstone and critical. But I think one of the issues with the legacy system is it only relied on these. And today we combine subjective evaluation with objective assessments to find out what officers have the right combination of potential and performance in order to contribute at the next level. This process that we've done has driven a huge change in terms of those who we select for command. From the Battalion Commander Assessment Program, we drove a 34% change with the BCAP-produced command list compared with what the legacy list would have contributed. In real terms, that means on a list of 436 officers, there are 150 different officers that were selected instead of just doing the simple file review. We expect to see some, a significant amount of changes as well when the results are approved from the Colonel's Commander Assessment Program. With the execution of the next BCAP program in November next month, we're going to have over 1,800 candidates and officers who have gone through the Commander Assessment Program to find out who the leaders for our Army are going to be in the next decades to come. And during this November execution, we're running prototypes that are figuring out how we can determine who acquisition leaders are, and then how we can start using this process to select sergeant majors for our Army as well. Okay, and we know, because we can actually show you the data of who you would have put in command under the legacy system, vice the new system, that we are putting in officers into the system who are more physically fit, who are more cognitively capable, who are better communicators, and who are less toxic. We're doing that all through the use of assessments, which provide us that objective look, and then we can build upon this year after year as we look at this. We think this is going to drive increased effectiveness in units and increased retention of soldiers. We've also transformed the traditional centrally controlled assignment process for the Army and created the Army Talent Alignment process, which is a market which just opened up for the second iteration of it just today. This is a regulated market-based approach in which officers' preferences is most heavily weighted. By the end of this year, in 2 assignment cycles, we will assign more than 30,000 officers in the active duty under this new system. And the Army is gathering tremendous information about what talent units need, as well as the talents that our officers have. And we see in the future integrating the information that we're gathering from assessments, from their entire program, from how we bring them in before commissioning all the way up to the War College, into this system to make sure we get the right talent match and maximize the potential of our officers. We're also excited about the new talent-based career alignment program, which we're piloting right now at 4 different captain's career courses, which is going to have our most talented officers who have the most war-winning talent as identified by assessments, and also combine it with what we've seen from their evaluations. We offer them an assured mid-career pathway, which takes them from the captain's career course to CGSC, which gives them a series of guaranteed assignments in order to retain them to stay until CGSC and then continue on their contributions to the Army. All these initiatives are designed to ensure we develop, employ, and retain our most talented officers so we can be ready for war in the future. We're looking forward to expanding these initiatives to the non-commissioned officer corps. We stood up an NCO cell, and we have stood up a Guard and Reserve cell within our task force in order to start seeing how the lessons we've learned from the active duty officer corps can be applied to those 2 components. Just 2 final thoughts. That is, talent management for the Army means more work. Okay? It means more work for individual officers who now have to actually fill out the backside of their ORBs, who have to solicit inputs from units and go advocate for themselves to be hired through the Army Talent Alignment process. It means more work as we run boards that spend 5 days instead of just a few minutes on every officer's file. It means more work for the Army as a whole as we do this. But this is critical work to ensure that we get the maximum amount of contribution from every single soldier and civilian that we have within our formation. And finally, that the Chief of Staff has told us that the time to transform is now, and that people are our #1 priority. And these changes that we're executing right now and others to come are ensuring that we're rapidly moving towards creating the 21st century talent management system that we will need in the future in order to win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We are pleased to have Ms. Carol Burton with us today. Ms. Burton is the Director of Civilian Human Resources Agency. She provides comprehensive civilian human resources services, advice, and support to commanders, directors, and employees. Ms. Burton.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Burton, the Director of the Civilian Human Resource Agency. And a few minutes ago, you heard Dr. Rudinsky talk about the Army People Strategy and the Army's effort to build a 21st century talent management process that includes a focus area on acquire, develop, employ, and retain. And I'm going to focus my remarks today on the first 2, only because I have only 5 minutes. Otherwise, I would talk about all 4. Maybe perhaps another panel I can do that. But I am going to focus today on acquire and develop from a civilian perspective. In terms of acquire, we're focused on 3 broad areas, and that is marketing, recruitment, and onboarding. So number one, marketing. We now have, for the first time ever, an effort to include civilians in our marketing plan. We're working out the details in terms of our requirements and our resources, but what we know now is that we'll focus on the STEM occupations. So engineers and scientists, modeling, IT, and cyber. So stay tuned for more on the civilian marketing program. In terms of recruitment, we know that in order to snag the best talent, we've got to be fast. And our goal is 45 days. But right now we're at about 75 days, so we've got some work to do. Our focus will be on using the direct hire authorities that we have available to us. We're encouraging our selecting officials to use our resume mining feature in our applicant database. And then finally, we are submitting a legislative proposal for additional direct hire authorities. In terms of onboarding, thanks to the Army People Strategy, we have a specific action item to address onboarding across the enterprise. We have some commands and some units who've nailed it. They know what they're doing. They've got a great onboarding and acculturation program. And we want to share those best practices across the enterprise. So as a part of the Army People Strategy, we will issue some enterprise-wide guidance on what our expectations are and how we want to welcome our new civilians. I next want to give you two specific examples regarding Acquire that I think you'll find really interesting. So the first is the Army, the Futures Command Software Factory. And that's an initiative to make sure that our soldiers have software-based solutions. Well, there are civilians associated with the software factory as well. And it's so important to the Army that we have earmarked some specific funding to recruit some talent, some folks who have that software experience to help with that initiative. We'll start with college recruitment, and then we'll go from there. The second Acquire initiative that I think is really interesting is the Race for Talent for data scientists, or those who have data analytics experience. Right now, we're determining our requirements, and then we're going to look at our current workforce, because we know that we probably have people already in the workforce who have some type of data experience. So once we have our requirements, and we know what we have, and we know what the gap is, then we'll go after some recruitment. I now want to move on to develop. So this is my third panel this week, and if you've heard my remarks earlier in the week, you heard me talk about the movement of the Army Career Program to CHARA and the establishment of the Army Civilian Career Management Activity, or ACMA. So if you've heard this before, forgive me, but it's really important, so I'm going to talk about it again. This summer, the Army directed the movement of the Army career programs to CHARA, and we established, as I mentioned, the Army Civilian Career Management Activity, or ACMA. So in a few short months, we moved all the funding and the force structure to CHARA, and that's a really big deal. If you've ever moved funding and force structure, you know it's a big deal, but it's not the best part. The best part is that we changed the construct of the career programs. So previously what we had was 32 siloed career programs without much interaction and very, very specific. So for example, logistics, ammo, supply were all separate career programs. Well, now we have a broad career field called logistics that includes all of those related occupations. It's the same for other occupations such as military personnel, civilian personnel, CEO, manpower. We now have a career field that's titled Human Resources and Resource Management. So what that enables the civilians to be able to get cross-leveling experience and broader career opportunities. And what we're doing is we are building multifunctional leaders of the future. So people are our greatest asset, and that's why we're spending so much time talking about talent management. I did get the sign that my time's almost up, so I'll close my remarks now, but I'll look forward to talking to you more about this important topic through the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our last panelist of the day is Lieutenant General Gary Brito, the G1. He is responsible for developing, managing, and executing manpower and personnel plans, programs, and policies for the total Army. Sir.
Thank you, General Lawrence. Thank you to my panel teammates as well. Many of the highlights in our talent management system have been addressed by my peers. So I would like to spend my time talking about one critical enabler to help make all this a reality, which is going quite well for us so far. And that would be the Integrated Personnel and Pay System, Army, IPSA Army, more common acronym. We have to have acronyms in the Army as well. I would say that IPSA has moved from a big idea concept over the last few years clearly to reality that is going to enable all of our talent management systems to work well into the 21st century and our operators beyond. I would like to stress that this critical enabler for our Army People strategy is helping us transition into the 21st talent management system that was addressed by J.P. McGee and others. It is very, very much human resource data rich. And IPSA is our #1 human resource management modernization effort to date, and it's going very effectively so far. I would like to mention that through the National Guard, they did lead the way at the initial implementation of IPSA over the last year or two. And right now, IPSA is live with more than 300,000 Army National Guard soldiers and users across 54 states and territories. That would be Release 1 and 2. Release 3 of IPSA is completely built. Our experts are testing it now, and it will go live in December of 2021. And there is a lot of work between now and December 21 to be done by the total Army. And this Release 3, when fully integrated and operational, which will be successful, will integrate more than 1.1 million soldiers, all components, into the personnel and pay system to help us deliver and see total force visibility that will support readiness, talent management, and auditability. It will be very great for our Army. Now that we're talking about talent management, IPSA will also help us provide advanced, enhanced, and innovative decision-making capabilities for the total force and for those of us who manage people, which is the #1 priority for our Chief of Staff. This is also going to allow us to maximize talents, see talents, manage soldiers, put the soldier to the right job in the right place at the right time. And IPSA will also be a repository of data utilizing a 25-point talent profile system right now that includes tons or hundreds of elements of data regarding knowledge, skills, behavior, experience, readiness, and preferences, things we just could not see before. This data will help us provide a holistic talent management profile for each soldier, regardless of their rank and specialty, and introduce a whole soldier concept to help us exercise all our talent management initiatives at all levels, all 3 components, and that's critical. And some will extend to our civilian experts as well. I will add, just like any system, it's only as good as the data that comes into it. So it's important for the soldiers and commanders to stay focused, ensuring that the data accuracy is working well, and through our human resource specialists, we'll continue to work with the units and individuals to ensure that we make our established gates on the road to the integration of Release 3 and beyond. To wrap up, this is very exciting, very innovative, very future-focused, and it's going to help us implement the talent management system talent management process that has been addressed by my peers. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to addressing any questions.
Thank you, sir. And as you all were speaking, questions have come in. The first one is directed to the panel across the board. Given the Army's siloed approach to personnel management, how does the panel see talent management synchronization and institutionalization occurring in the future?
Take a stab at that for the get-go. That's really the role of the people strategy. And so by having this document, what it does is set out for the folks in the Pentagon and the Army major commands a vision of where we're going and the key lines of effort to get us there, the things that are going to enable our success, and then a very clear idea of the outcome we see. And so those key enablers we've touched on here today, if they're not in place, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. So IPSA, as unexciting as that sounds, turns out to be vital. It is the underlying technology that allows our folks to communicate with the Army and units, their talents, their aspirations, and really their passions and where they'd like to see themselves go. And they do that in a variety of ways. One is through participation in assessments. General McGee spoke about those and their outcomes on those. Another way is their self-declared sort of attributes. Here's the books I'm reading. Here's my hobbies. Here's how I spend my free time. Here is, the things I'm very, very good at and excited about doing. Here's the opportunities I'd like to secure. All those things are really important to the Army to know. The old data systems don't support any of that. The new data systems provide a pretty handy way to enter that information, to capture that information, to share it, and then for folks in the Army to communicate that with people that own jobs. And a way for people who own jobs to see all the talent there is in the Army and to communicate about, hey, would you like to join our team? Here's the opportunities we can provide. We're very interested in the skills you have. The other thing it does for us, let us redefine work. Up till now, we've been in what people used to call the ownership economy. I get assigned to some unit, and while I'm there, they kind of own my time and they direct my effort. That'll continue, but we have now ways with IPSA and the new technologies to virtually participate somewhere else in the Army, or perhaps participate by TDY. That's going to be huge for our civilian workforce, as well as for our Guard and Reserve. A huge amount of talent in those locations. Much of it we can't see today, but by 2021 we'll see it because IPSA will be fully online. And then a mechanism for somebody to join in who may be in Idaho that wants to help a unit that's forward deployed somewhere in the world, and they've got some unique skills that would be vital if they were only available to that unit that's forward deployed. That's going to require us in another area, critical enablers, to build out some new authorities to figure out how to compensate people for virtual work, or TDY, how to accommodate that, how to recognize that work and efficiency reports, so that downstream we know that work's been done and the degree was done well. That's going to require some new thinking and new authorities, and some resourcing. This document, APS, is already driving resourcing. In Carol's area, we've committed about $50 million a year to support development of supervisors and leaders, to support the development of strong career programs, and those resources are now committed. Without the people strategy, that synchronization would not have occurred. And then finally, the lines of effort. What is the most important one? We've identified acquire. We've got to get the right people at the outset, and then we've got to work hard to keep them engaged, develop them, give them great opportunities, and then put them in the right time, the right place at the right time. And the reason we want to do that is that outcome. Cohesive teams to win. We don't think our enemies are going to be able to do this. People have become a key asymmetric advantage for our Army, and we've identified that, and we don't think our competitors will be able to do it because their culture, which is a key enabler for us, doesn't fit. We've got to build that trust where people will share information with us, where there's trust that when they ask for an assignment, they've got an opportunity to compete for it. You can see us doing that in the marketplace. We ran last fall, and the one we're running this year, that'll expand into Guard and Reserve. It'll expand into the NCO ranks. The civilians are working a similar approach. It's a little different because not so focused on moving between stations, but focused on opportunities within stations. And so all these things have to be synchronized. Without a strategy, that just couldn't happen, and that's why it didn't happen before. Anybody want to?
Okay, that was great, sir. Thank you. Our next question that came in is, how does the Army plan to compete, acquire, and retain the extremely high demand talent in data scientists, which by industry standards tend to require advanced degrees? Will this be done solely from the ranks, or will there be an opportunity for lateral entry into the Army? Sure.
So I'll take this. This is General McGee. So right now the Army is embarking on a number of initiatives in order to ensure that we have the right high demand talent in terms of data science and software specifically. So one of the things we're doing right now is we've embarked on a pilot program at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a world leader in data science, where right now we have 20 officers and 4 civilians who are embarked on an 18-month data science, data engineering master's degree program. That's the most extensive one. We're also bringing a number of candidates to do a 6-month certification, which we can then return them to the force. And we're going to expand that program over the next couple of years in order to get that larger and more impactful as we're developing that in conjunction with CMU. That's directly at the guidance and direction of the Secretary of the Army. In terms of, and so we understand that data scientists is a critical skill set that we need. We need to get the right people. And so some of those will be plucked from inside the force, trained, and moved out. And I think the great thing is across the active Guard, Reserve, and civilian components, what we find is we have lots of soldiers or civilians who have these skill sets that we can capitalize on and then repurpose them in order to contribute in this mission that's going to be really important our Army as a future. The other part is the opportunities that have been extended to us to increase our opportunities for lateral entry, as authorized in the 2019 NDAA, which allows us now to direct commission in officers from 01 to 06. Previously, it had been limited to 01 to 03. And we're working through what that looks like right now. We've already commissioned into the National Guard a cyber officer as a field grade officer, and then we're looking at how we can do this for some of these other unique technical skills that we know that we're going to want to acquire and bring into our force. And today we're talking about data scientists and data engineers, but the vision is we need to have something that is going to be ahead of what the need is, and a place where we can actually manage and bring in these unique talents. Today it's data scientists, tomorrow it's going to be quantum computing, 5 years from now it might be bioengineering. We don't know what these fields are, but we do know that we structurally need a change to be able to rapidly adapt to technological innovations that are going to have impact on the way that we fight wars in the future. The current system that we're changing is really strained to do that because we're forced to stick them into a legacy proponent, which may or may not be the right fit. And we're trying to develop that model so how we can do this much more flexibly and with an eye to the future in terms of the skills that we're going to need, many of which we haven't even anticipated yet.
Now, if I could just embellish a little bit, one of the problems we have, whatever that skill might be, it could be in medicine, it could be in science and technology, it could be in a variety of areas, is our problem is identifying actually what do we need. We're a very large organization, a man, 3 people, across civilian, Guard, Reserve, active, across 54 different geographic jurisdictions, states and territories, and very hard for the Army at the top to know what we need. We've done that through a bunch of processes over the years, councils of colonels and so forth, but with the marketplace, our units are going to tell us what they need. Whether it's at Futures Command or at the 1st Cavalry Division, we can see what sort of attributes are our units going after. The folks that they're communicating and trying to bring into their formations, what are their talents, what are their skills, knowledge, and behaviors. We can see how often those are required. We can see how those requirements build up command levels and across organizations. And so this market will begin to reveal to us unit requirements. We'll see how many of those requirements are satisfied in the market. That'll show us our gaps. Those gaps should signal us as how to build incentives, either career incentives with educational opportunities or perhaps maybe financial incentives, opportunities to serve intermittently. But that'll really clue us in as to where are our gaps. Were we filling those with internal development? Was that something TRADOC built for us? Was it something we acquired either in an academy or ROTC or through a direct hire program? So we'll know what to resource. And so we're going to have a lot of information that we never had before, just as our folks are getting a lot of information and our units are that they never had before, thanks to the marketplace approach built on this IPSA technology.
Sir, and I'd like to add something as well. We do have lateral entry on the civilian side, so you can enter federal service at the 15 level or even the executive service with only private industry experience, and it happens all the time. In fact, we welcome that applicant pool. I also want to go back to JP's comment about the Carnegie Mellon program, and I talked about that cross-functional experience, and I want to give you a specific example. We do have 2 CHARA employees who are at Carnegie Mellon earning a graduate degree in data science, fully funded, 2 HR practitioners earning a degree in data science, and I think that's pretty cool, and it's never been done before.
That is amazing.
Isn't it cool?
It is. Ms. Burton, I'm going to continue with you. What CHARA system will be like IPSA for Army civilians, or will IPSA eventually include civilians? Moreover, how might we see the preference and potential future Army talent of those forces families?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be in another occupation, but if I had my preference, certainly we'd have one system for military and civilian personnel. And what we're going for is we want to be more prescriptive in how we assign talent. So if we know, for example, a family member who has a medical degree is going to X, we should know that in advance so that we can make that a placement. And we're actually working towards that. We've done some work in that area already, but that is our goal, is to be able to have one system and to be able to be prescriptive in the assignment of our talent.
Carol, I think DOD is working on a system, DCHARM?
Yes, there is a system called Defense Civilian Human Resource Management System, DCHARM. So what we have right now is all of the components have their own database. In the near future, we will have one database called DCHARMS, and that will make it easier to see data and to move data. So when we move someone right now, say from Army to Navy, it's a completely new record. With D-Charms, it'll be seamless. We'll just change the organizational unit. It'll be much easier to see and use that data.
So when we communicate with DOD, DOD will be the repository for a lot of the similar IPSA data that would be for the civilian workforce. But when we communicate with DOD, we've got IPSA in mind for the civilians. Unlikely we'll get the civilians into IPSA anytime soon, but D-Charms, we're looking for that to do, I think, many of those functions and provide the capability for our civilians to document, much in the same way the military will be able to, their aspirations, their talents, and so forth. So stand by. We are working on it.
We are.
It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come.
General Brito, we've heard IPSA now mentioned a couple times in all the answers, and so you're right, how important it is. So for our soldiers, what will be different? How will this program, mobility, ease of use, what
Well, all three. For one, there's some upfront work there's some upfront work that needs to take place, and that's working with the users in the field, the soldiers in the field, and the human resource specialists to ensure that the current data we have in the system, let's say a social security number or someone's database in a training management system, that data needs to be correct. There's ongoing training programs, ongoing communications between the G1s and IPSA teams now across all three components to ensure all those gates are met, working is up to at least 3. Once that data is correct into the system, it'll enable us to see up and down, laterally, cross components to see all the information related to a certain soldier and or its units. So the data correctness now, which will, I'll illustrate some keyboard work that needs to take place now, will allow us to get to that. Also, we have some application-based phone apps that soldiers can use. What was well over 150 systems will be downgraded to I won't say single digits, but about half. Of course, and with all that, those systems going down from 150, 180 and below will still give us all the capabilities, but you're not going to have separate stovepipes, separate swim lanes of information, or separate databases all in one. So we will get there. As I mentioned, at least 1 and 2 with the National Guard is very positive, very proactive, and effective so far. I expect that at least 4 and subsequent at least 3 will be the same. And the soldiers will have quicker access, easy visibility, and the respective firewalls or security measures will manage that as well to ensure it works for all soldiers.
Thank you, sir. General McGee, what talent management initiatives will transfer over from the officers to the non-commissioned officers? And is the task force working different initiatives? And what comes to mind for me as you talk about the new process of selecting our key commanders, will you do the same thing for the sergeant majors?
Thanks, ma'am. It's a great question. So we have stood up a non-commissioned officer talent management cell under the Army's Talent Management Task Force. They work with a lot of guidance from the Sergeant Major of the Army in terms of moving the management of the non-commissioned officer corps towards a 21st century talent management system. I think it's important to note that you manage different groups of soldiers differently, and so a lot of the things that we do for the officer corps may have some relevance to how we manage non-commissioned officer corps, but it might look a little different because of the nature of responsibility. And so one of the things that's very different with non-commissioned officers is just the size and the scale of the number of non-commissioned officers. Now, that's not a dodge. We are looking at where we can apply these. So I'll give you some specific initiatives we're working right now in order to start moving the non-commissioned officer corps towards a more 21st century talent management system. But I do want to highlight that the officer corps and the non-commissioned officer corps are probably always going to be managed a little bit differently because they do different functions and they're different sizes. So one of the things we've started to do is ASK-EM, which is starting to move us towards a preference-based assignment system for non-commissioned officers. The other one is we are creating right now a first sergeant assessment program that is exportable to posts or to divisions, so they can use that to run some form of an assessment program to gather the objective assessment so they can make better picks about who they put in as first sergeants within their formations. And we all know that's a critical step for the non-commissioned officers, the non-commissioned officer corps. As we run our next iteration of BCAP in November, we're going to bring in a pilot, and we're going to bring in about 30 sergeant majors, and we're going to run them through what a prototype would look like to do a command sergeant major or sergeant major assessment program in order to determine where we would want to do that, whether that's at the nominative level or brigade level or battalion level level Sergeant Majors. And so we are starting to move out, and that team, which is led right now by Sergeant Major Rob Haney, is starting to build up momentum as we're starting to do these different initiatives, and then look at how we can apply that across the non-commissioned officer corps. So plenty of work still ahead, but I think we're moving out very rapidly on that.
Thank you very much. And I think this next one, go back to you, General McGee and General Brito, please. Does the marketplace system encourage officers to take on assignments different from their KSB strengths, experience? Example, airborne experienced officer to take on a striker mechanized assignment. Overall, will talent management provide strategic level leaders with a broad and diverse operational set of experiences?
I got that. So I think it absolutely will. I think how it goes about doing it is going to be different. So in the old system, what we would do is we would tell officers where they had to go. Like it really ran with a, we know best, we know where you need to go, your preferences really aren't that important, but if you want to be competitive, you need to do these things. And in the future, what's going to happen is with the flexibility and preferences that we're giving to officers, which by the way, is routinely listed as one of the key concerns that officers want to have in terms of how they're managed. They want their preference matter, they want more flexibility. What we're saying through mentors and how they develop their subordinates is like, look, you can take a career path, for example, that is going to maybe keep you at Fort Bragg or only in airborne units for the first 16 years of your life. You can do that, as an infantry officer, but that means you're never going to command a brigade in this Army because you don't have the breadth of experiences in order to graduate up to that higher level. Now, you could say as an individual officer, that's all I want to be. I want to be an airborne battalion commander, and I'm really not interested in doing anything else, and there are all sorts of reasons why I want to stabilize in a certain area. But you have to understand what the consequences are, and then we'll find those officers who want to have diverse experiences, want to have broad operational and strategic experiences, and we'll use that as a criteria to pick those who we graduate up to the highest levels. But the difference is it's not the Army telling you you must be groomed to become a general officer or a brigade commander. It's you deciding as an officer that that's the path you want to be on, and then your preference will drive you towards what assignments you take.
Absolutely. And the family gets a vote as well. Yes, sir.
If I can add 100% on JP, but it also helps the institution manage the training, professional military education that officer may need. For example, we know the preferences that he or she may want in October. We can plan to write a leader course or something like that, the striker leader course, help manage that transition as well. So that triad between what we're doing in talent management, institutionalizing the process, the leadership and mentorship, all help solidify the best career path for the soldier, regardless of their rank.
Yeah.
Just to implement one thing, a great deal of work went on. We're kind of trying to give you a report card today of what we've done the last year and a little bit insight where we're going on the next 18 months. This got going between, I think it was March 2019 and August of 2019, enabling the market, the first one we did last fall, with a complete review of business rules. We visited with all the commandants, all the proponents about their branches, and General McGee sort of led that effort, and we discussed questions about, okay, what are the keys to this branch? What do we need to keep? What can go? What should we add? And these sorts of questions. And so we just hit one of them, the heavy light question. Is it okay for officers in certain branches to do light, and stay light? And we came on a rule of thumb that actually the branch said that never existed. But be that as it may, it was an urban legend in the Army. And it was one of the things that went. So we will not impose from the Army level, a pattern of assignments, which would be light, heavy, or something like that. We're going to rely on officer preferences, but informed by the knowledge that, you may be taking some risk, and it's your risk to take. Sequential assignments in the same post. Officers and troops may have a reason to want to stay on the same post for an extended period of time. You may be taking risk if you do that, but we're going to entertain that preference. So a whole lot of ground level work went into the business rules that are going to operate the personnel system, a complete review of them, a revision of many of them, and that put in place the foundation for the marketplace that took place last year and will take place this year, which gets to the sorts of things General McGee was talking about. Informed risk-taking by our officers and troops, our sergeants, but a clear expectation that we're going to entertain their preferences well up the hierarchy of things that are going to matter in making assignments.
Thank you, sir, and I want to thank this distinguished panel today. This was very insightful. I know we're all watching it with bated breath and excited, as I stated in my opening comments, being able to balance the needs of individuals to the needs of the Army. And as we heard from the panel today, the Army is driven to win this war for talent and is revolutionizing our talent management system and the processes that will go along with it. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today.
Thank you.